Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Flying and Eating. Today, let's go somewhere and do something, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hey guys, it's Adam here. On the last few episodes of Flying and Eating, we made our way out to the U.S. territories in the South Pacific, notably the CNMI, Saipan and Tinian very specifically, as well as Guam, where we are now. So today, the adventure continues with beaches and vacation adventure, and of course, lots and lots of food. Good morning. It's day, I don't know, but what we're going to do right now is hang out on the beach for a little bit. It's starting to rain a little bit, but no big deal there. I can hang out in the water and enjoy more water, I guess. Then we'll go out and get food. I actually have a special recommendation that we're going to try out. How cool is that? You got a complete rainbow arch across the water while we stand in the water. If people are like, wait a minute, why is Guam part of the United States? Empire, and not American Empire, Spanish Empire. Basically, the super condensed version of this is, like all these islands, they had a local population. You notice Chamorro. Brian, who you've seen in other videos, is Chamorro. They are the descendants of... It's not totally known, but they think, like, you know, what we now call the Philippines used to have a native population that just kind of spread out and went throughout all these islands. And much like the Philippines, Guam and all these other islands were eventually conquered by the Spanish. They just kind of showed up and said, that looks nice, I'm going to go ahead and take that. Because that's the world we lived in prior to World War II, was empires. It was all just, hey, I'm going to go conquer a place, steal its resources to benefit my, my local population. So the Spanish held on to all these islands for, I think, a few hundred years. And then what really changes is the Spanish-American War. The United States and Spain go to war. The United States wins pretty handedly and essentially inherits all of its territories. That would include Cuba, that would include the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, etc. Not CNMI, interestingly enough. That's a little slightly different situation. But over that time, the United States just started giving away most of them. They promised Cuba independence, they gave it to them. They promised the Philippines independence, they gave it to them. They did it in different time frames. Cuba was 2 years, Philippines was like 40 years. But yeah, Puerto Rico famously stuck kind of in territory status, as is Guam and the others, but they all had different deals cut. Guam was interesting because the United States never cut a deal with it. And largely the local population had been wiped out, and it was just kind of like a, well, I don't know what we do with it situation. Now you have to understand something historically about the era in which this was acquired. The number one enemy to the United States at the time was not, you know, the Germans or the Japanese or the Soviets or any of that. It was actually the British. They were still our number one regional threat. And so we thought, okay, you know, we wanted to challenge the British a little bit. We had no bases or strongholds in Europe, but the British had a ton of them in North America. You know, they still owned a whole lot of islands, which, fun fact, that's actually why the Americans eventually backed the British in the Second World War, as the part of that Lend-Lease program. The British had to agree to give up all their military bases throughout the Caribbean, and they did. But before all that, the United States thought, okay, if a war ever starts, if we ever need anything we need any sort of bases or anything like that, Guam was a perfect one because the British had a whole lot of islands out here, and we thought, okay, maybe better to fight a war out there than to fight a war over here. That was basically the logic. And it just kind of sat there and held Guam until the Second World War. The Japanese famously invaded it in 1941. Do you know when? December 8th, 1941, the exact same day they attacked Pearl Harbor. And I know you're thinking, no, Pearl Harbor is December 7th. Yes, but international time zones, the date line. At the exact same time, Hawaii was waking up on December 7th to be attacked. It was December 8th over on this side of the world, and the Japanese attacked not only Guam, but the Philippines, and successfully took both. The United States would eventually liberate both. I believe Guam was liberated in 1944. and has been under American occupation or control or territory status, whatever, however you want to phrase it, has been part of the United States ever since. The CNMI was a different situation. The CNMI was Spanish, but they knew they were going to lose the war, so they actually sold those islands to the Germans relatively quickly before the war ended. That way, when the United States would win, they wouldn't become part of the U.S. Instead, they would end up being part of Germany. Germany didn't hold those islands for particularly long. They only had them for like 14 years. The Japanese invaded in World War I, and the German response was like, okie dokie, we don't really care. They didn't really want them to begin with. And so the Japanese just held them until the end of the Second World War. Now, at the end of the Second World War, the United States didn't necessarily have any great claim to the CNMI. They did have a claim to Guam, but not the CNMI. And the only reason they ended up taking them was, we had just beat the Japanese. We were mad at them because they had, they used Tinian specifically as a launching pad to attack Guam, as well as, I believe, the Philippines as well. And so we did not like the idea of the Japanese having a base anywhere that close to us, especially after we had just fought the Second World War against them. So essentially, the CNMI was annexed. So at one time, they were both unified under Spain, and then only 45 years later, they were unified under the United States. And that's where they still sit to this day. So, you know, I don't live in these islands, even though I am technically a citizen of them. So I'm in no position to tell them what to do or how to feel, but I do ask the locals, like, what do you feel? What do you want? When your options are statehood, status quo, independence, or even possible restoration with Japan, people in the CNMI get a good laugh out of that. The idea of returning to Japan, every single person said no to that. Nobody wanted that. Status quo, they kind of like, largely out of fear of change, because, you know, this is the devil you know, as opposed to the devil you don't know. There are certain advantages to being a territory. You know, certain federal rules do not apply to you. Certain, I guess you would consider them like states' laws almost, do not apply to you, and you have certain additional controls. But at the same time, you also lack certain rights and certain benefits because you are not, in fact, a state. So statehood, for example, means you get certain benefits. And one of them I'll throw out there, because this came up when I was talking to them in the CNMI, is the United States has no official language. It's actually like a rule of the United States. We obviously mostly speak English, but that's not actually the law. CNMI actually has in its law, according to what I was told, official languages. So what that would mean is if you got statehood, you'd have to give that up. That doesn't mean you can't continue to speak the local languages. It just means they aren't legally represented anymore, because no language, including English, is represented in that situation. So Guam seems a lot more pro-statehood. CNMI seems also pro-statehood with certain conditions. But I've had this discussion with the locals as well, and they all seem to kind of agree if they were going to get statehood, you would have to essentially do a merger of the CNMI and Guam into one state, which is not unprecedented. That's what happened to Hawaii. Every island in the Hawaiian chain was actually a series of different U.S. territories for a time, and then they said, okay, we'll give you statehood, but you got to kind of all be one thing. That would absolutely have to happen here. And the people on Guam seem kind of okay with this, because I think they acknowledge that they are essentially the mainland of this region. They have the largest population, so they would also likely make every political decision. That's where the CNMI gets kind of like, like they know that would be necessary for statehood. There's no way the CNMI could be considered its own state on its own. It doesn't have the population for it. It doesn't have the economy for it. It just wouldn't work. But if you merged with Guam, you made one state out of it, you have a better case. But the problem would be then Guam would be making a lot of local level decisions for Tinian and Saipan and so on. It's to me, that's all fascinating. I believe that they should get statehood if that's what they want, but they're also wise enough to understand that independence is not a smart idea, for the most part. I'm sure there's people who make that exception, but I'll throw this out to you. Independence with little islands is a nice romantic idea, but it almost never works out for any of them. Like, for example, in the Caribbean, name one successful country that isn't Barbados, that also isn't dependent upon a bigger country. You know, you might think, oh, the Cayman Islands, I always hear about how valuable those are. Those are still British. The difference, we were talking before about British bases. They took all their military assets out of the Caribbean, but not their territorial assets, although most of those are gone. But like British Virgin Islands are still there. Most of the nicer islands you have been to or heard of are all dependencies of, say, the United States, France, Denmark, no, not Denmark, the Netherlands. Not the Spanish, obviously, or, you know, they're just like remnants of European colonialism or dependent upon other countries in the region. And that's what kind of makes it interesting when you talk to people in these islands who say they want independence. I think they want independence without the understanding of how economically devastating that would be. Try going to one of those countries. Now, the reason Barbados is an interesting exception is because when the British Empire was collapsing, Barbados was the only one of those territories to figure out, like, we are not going to survive on tourism alone, and we don't know what's going to happen. So they actually spent 40 years investing in education infrastructure so that everyone would, you know, not just grow up to be like, oh, I'll work at a hotel. They would work up, you know, they become lawyers, doctors, engineers. That is the way to do it, but that requires significant effort that, frankly, no other islands ever attempt to do. So it's not impossible, but it's highly improbable. So you can complain about territories not having statehood, not having all the equal rights, and I agree with you. They should be states if that's what they want to do. They should also be independent countries if that's what they want to do. But you got to think about the logical extremes of what happens in either of those scenarios, and that is why you end up with status quo. Right now, life's basically all right. Why rock the boat? That's the way they see it. And I can't tell them that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I don't live here. All I know is from a perspective of a tourist, this is a paradise. I just wish they could vote. So here's what we're gonna do. There's a buddy of mine. I've never actually met him, so it's I like to call us buddies, but I guess we don't. You know, you have to meet first, whatever. Anyway, this dude is a big Filipino actor, actually based out here in Guam, although currently he's in the Philippines, otherwise we would have hung out. He actually watched my videos last year, reached out to me. His name is Benjamin Alves, or Alves. I actually don't even know how to pronounce his last name. You can Google him. Anyway, so he's from here, and he recommended that I go to this one very specific ramen place. Per Benjamin's instructions, I have waited out here just before opening. They opened at 11:30. It's now 11:29. We'll see how this goes. No line, which is good. Probably because there's been raining a bit, but he said this place fills up quick, so ready to go. My Tantan ramen has arrived. It looks really good. It's also like on fire, so we're gonna wait a bit and let that cool off, because again, I suffer from cat tongue. I was also told I absolutely had to get this gyoza. It's really good, but it's really hot. I'm gonna have to wait a little bit longer on all this stuff, but it's very tasty. So I made a little dipping bit here. Just kind of go like that. So I finished up the gyoza. It has a nice crunch to it. I'm not used to that. Usually it's just kind of soggy. I guess it's supposed to have a crunch. I've never really had a good one, I guess. This, I just tried the broth. It's still really hot. It's got a good kick to it. It's spicy, but not like too spicy. So I just came out of there. It's pretty good. Yeah, Benjamin knew what he was talking about. Makes sense. He's been here. He lived here, you know. So the gyoza I talked about was crispier, which was nice. Very used to it being kind of soggy, which probably tells you something. The quality of the ramen was quite good. It was very spicy though. Like, I like spicy. I was cool with it, but you know, even I'm like drinking a ton of water. I would imagine that particular one would be problematic for some people, but there's a whole bunch of different choices. But yeah, it was good. I would recommend coming out here if you are in the mood for like good Japanese food, kind of hidden in Guam, because this building, as you can see, is just kind of, it's off the beaten path a little bit. It's just kind of hidden away. If anyone was a big fan of the movie Porky's, Guam's got you. So there's a decent little look at the, I guess you would say, like, right there is where the downtown, shall we say, strip kind of begins, and it curves all the way around there up through all the hotels and all that. I want to check out this place, Slingstone Coffee and Tea, and see if that's any good. Although, I don't know how, it says it's open, but it doesn't look very open. But let's go take a look, shall we? They are open, and Signature Coffees, I wanted to do something special. That caught my attention. It's Chamorro, it's local, or Chamarita, whatever. But either way, it's local. I also got a large one because I want a lot of coffee. That's 24 ounces of coffee. I won't lie, the Mac Nut did look interesting. All of these look good, but that's what I did. Usually I just do a black coffee, but if I'm gonna go to somewhere special, let's do something special, you know? So I'm walking back from getting coffee. I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I'm white. It happens, it's really hot here, but you know, I'm gonna get inside. And I'm driving along, and this dude right here His name is Azarias?
Azarias.
He was just driving past and he was like, yo, are you a YouTuber? Yeah. And
Yep.
so, dude, thank you for what you saw the Guam videos, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, thank you for watching that. I appreciate it. Any suggestions for anybody if they want to come to Guam, what they should do? Anything. Restaurant, hotel, whatever you would do. Whatever you would recommend to anyone for any reason.
Eggs and things, the Chamorro Locomoco.
Yes, I've had that actually. He's right. That place is really good. Well, dude, thank you. Thank you for watching the videos. I look forward to the next one, hopefully, whenever it comes out. And, dude, just keep being awesome here on Guam.
Yep.
All right, let's give this a shot. That's really good. It's, it tastes kind of, it's sugary, it's nutty. I want to say caramelly, but I don't think that was actually what was in it. But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's terrible for you. It's definitely a lot of sugar and cream and stuff in this, but what a way to go, man. It's also that time of the day where I've got to stay inside because between like 1 and 4 p.m., it's just too hot for my white Chicago northern butt out there, man. At night, it is amazing to take a stroll, especially when it's not raining. But it's just the temperature is just perfect to just walk around, especially, again, if you're in this, you know, the Tumon area and everything. Everything's lit up. You can go wherever you want. Nightlife's pretty good. I'm hungry. I'm fat. That's what happens. So I'm going over to Mezclados. If you guys saw the videos last year, Mezclados is a really great burger place. There's like technically 2 locations, plus there's Mezcla Senior, or Mezclos, which is also has 2 locations. Mezclo, which I did a video at as well, is kind of the fancier sit-down restaurant with a lot of local Chamorro stuff. Mezclados is a burger place. There's one up in town, and then there's one next to the Kmart. I showed you guys the one next to Kmart, which is, we're actually going back to that location because that one's definitely open. It's also very walkable from here. That and I might stop at Kmart to actually like buy stuff. I need a couple provisions, whatever. But yeah, the Mezclados, if you never saw the other video, that's fine. The reason that place is special to me, A, they have incredible food. B, and I told the story last time, I brought my mother out here a couple times before she passed away, and my mom was not really a foodie, but she also very rarely finished anything she ate. Mezclados, she had this ham and cheese, grilled cheese thing. She demolished it. Absolutely demolished it. Went back the next year, demolished it again. And like until, really, I'm not even joking, until just a couple days before she died, she still described that sandwich. Like, she couldn't remember what she had for breakfast that morning. You know, it was never that important to her. She wasn't a foodie like me. She didn't pay attention to it. She would always be like, that was one sweet burger, man. So that place means a lot to me because it was the only time in the entire 33 years in which I got to know my mother that she ever really just remembered a meal that was that good to her, which tells you a lot. Thank you for allowing me to share that memory with you. Not only is it gigantic burgers, but it's really designed to cater to Japanese tastes, so like higher quality rather than just whatever. So it's basically you get like a giant jumbo American burger that's designed for a Japanese palate. Okay, I think I want this, the sweet and tasty burger. It's got donut buns, which usually I don't do, but I was tricked into that in West Virginia, and I thought it was amazing. So I want to see how Guam can do it, because they do the best burgers I've ever had. Funny thing about this, I have a buddy who lives up in South Korea who comes down here from time to time. He used to be able to regularly beat this, and he would just get all his food for free. It's pretty funny. So I know to a lot of people the idea of putting a donut bun on there is considered gross, but I don't know how else to phrase this unless you try it. When you compress it down, it actually becomes this nice sweet balance. It's a nice sweet savory thing, hence the name of this particular burger. So I just came out of there, did not disappoint. It was exactly what I wanted. It actually was even better than I remember it from last time anyway. It was so good. I know that people will be thrown off by the whole like putting donuts thing on there, but I'm telling you, I was opposed to it for years. I was like, that's stupid, don't do that, that's gross. It works. There's a reason they do it. The sweet balances so nicely with the savory. I believe it was actually called the sweet and tasty. Which it's true, man. That was a good burger. The fries, they were on their A game tonight. F a day, everyone. I do not know what day it is within the timeline of the videos. I'm sure editor me took care of that. But anyway, yeah, beautiful day here in paradise as it continues in America's jewel of the Pacific, Guam. So yeah, this morning, you know, I'm on beach island time. What are we gonna do? We're just gonna go ahead and hang out in the water for a bit, and then after that we'll go get food. So this time of the year, it's nice and warm, but not too hot. As I've said many times, that's the best time of the year to come here is in the winter, because it's like a perfect, you know, in Celsius, it's like 29, 30-ish. I don't know what that would be in Fahrenheit, but yes, I'm the odd American that thinks in Celsius. I actually have never learned Fahrenheit, fun fact. So yeah, 20 Celsius is like 70 Fahrenheit. So add to that, I don't know. Either way, it's nice out. So nice. I'm just gonna sit here and enjoy the water, my friends. The swim went very well. It did rain a bit, as you can still see back there. It's pretty dark, but it comes and goes, it comes and goes. I guess I thought I'd talk about the weather for a second. Like, oh, does it always rain this time of the year? No. This is the only time it's ever done this, in my experience. And I was talking to Brian about this, I was talking to Alex about this, and they all kind of said the same thing, like, this is ridiculous, it never rains like this. So, it's got its pluses and its minuses. Since I'm really just going in the water, it doesn't affect me all that much. And to be honest, it makes it more overcast, which I actually kind of like because it's less hot. But that's me. Usually it's not like this though. So it has its negatives too. Like obviously if I'm trying to walk down the street and it's gonna be like downpouring, which it clearly will later, that'll suck, but that's future me's problem. And not your problem. You got to watch this from the comfort of your phone or your computer or wherever you are, your living room, whatever. You get to hang out and just watch me suffer. Everywhere you'll see all sorts of American stores because it's all, like, trust me if you ever come down here, especially when tourism is operational, it's all Americana. But everyone here is usually Japanese or Korean tourists who just kind of want to try all this stuff. Don't eat at IHOP, by the way. I didn't know they opened a second one, though. The Sea Grill, I've never done this, the underwater world thing. I wanted to try this, but it's super expensive. You basically eat in like an aquarium, and then like there's just fish and sharks and stuff like swimming all around you and stuff. It seems really cool, but very expensive, and people have always told me the food's actually not very good. It's really, you just do it for the novelty. But there it is. And then so as we go up this hill, again, this would be kind of like the epicenter downtown type of area. I've never stayed in the Dusit Beach Resort, but this is probably the most centrally located hotel you could possibly have in the touristy district, because on that side is all the other shops and stuff, and on this side is shops, and this is the big mall. It's all right here in this one spot. And then there you go, the Sea Trek. There's another look at the grill, and you don't actually eat the fish in the aquarium. That's a nice move on their part not to do that. But yeah, then you have this big mall. I've been in there a few times. It's got a bunch of cool little stores in there that of course have all the same predictable trinkets and things like that. ABC stores, of course, you'll see everywhere for that kind of thing. Yeah, obviously you got things like Marc Jacobs and Rolex. Like every stereotypical American chain you can think of is all here basically to get the money of South Koreans, Japanese, and to some extent Chinese. And when I say that, I'm kind of loosely including people from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan in that. I'm not trying to get political about it, but they do essentially consider themselves separate. Anyway, people from those countries, a little bit of the Philippines, sometimes places like Thailand and Malaysia, etc. But the big bread and butter is the Japanese and the Koreans. And they all just come here. It's funny how many resources they have here to come and buy stuff and ship it. You know, like I saw tons of people just like on the phone, like, all right, which kind of American chocolates do you want? Okay, we'll ship those in a pallet. Like it's a whole big thing. So I just came out of Little Pica Cafe. It was pretty good. They were pretty accommodating. So they had two items I really wanted. One was like this, chamorro hollandaise egg sauce thing, like combination. I already forgot the name of it, but it's on screen. It was good, but they had this French toast with like bananas and like a Kahlua sauce, and I really wanted to try that. And I was like, can I get like a half order of the French toast? And they were like, no, but here's what we can do. They gave me the kids version, and then they just took out the bacon, the sides, and then they just replaced it with the things that are in the Kahlua version. So they were very accommodating to my request. And then it started storming out, and so like they just let me chill in there until the storm passed. So now I'm actually in a nearby mall, and I just thought maybe we'd cruise around here for a second and see if there's anything interesting. So when you enter this mall, it's kind of unique because, I mean, it's an American mall, which makes it not that unique, but everybody is here to buy the American stereotype stuff. Now, none of that interests me because I am an American, so I'm used to seeing that kind of thing at Target. But what's interesting here is that they have also the Guam stereotype stuff. So you got like, I love Guam shirts and Guam merchandise, and you even have like merchandise surrounding the local beer, which ironically is brewed in Wisconsin, but you get the point. So you can get a lot of that local stuff. This side of it is the side that interests me the most. So I got a little story for you. So they obviously have a lot of Hawaiian stuff. Hawaii is the nearest state to Guam. And so there's a lot of tourists who come here wanting to buy stuff from Hawaii or to impress their friends and claim they went to Hawaii when they went to Guam, etc. So you'll see a lot of that. What's funny is my mom and I were here once, and she very specifically wanted Guam-made stuff. And so she's like, I want, like macadamia nuts and things that were actually produced in Guam. Not just say Guam on them like these, but actually, made, although that does say it was made in Guam. But you get the point. Like some stuff, you got to be careful because it's not actually made here, or at least part of it is or isn't. So she was like, I want something 100% produced in Guam. And so she was just asking the lady for help. The lady takes her over to the section, and it's all the Hawaiian host stuff. And she's like, I don't want stuff from Hawaii. And then the woman was like, why not? What's wrong with Hawaii? And they just had like an amusing little chat. And she was like, yeah, Hawaii's great, but if I wanted stuff from Hawaii, I would go to Hawaii. I want stuff from Guam. So this is an example of what I mean. So it says made in Guam all over it. What they mean is the chocolate is. Right here, it actually notes that the macadamia nuts themselves grew in Hawaii. So only half of it actually is from here. But they actually do have a chocolate facility, which they show pictures of on the back. So it depends on how quote-unquote pure you want to be about it. I don't believe actually there are any macadamia nut facilities on Guam. There might be, don't hold me to that. But for the most part, they do the chocolate production here, but not that. So finding something that's 100% Guam is kind of challenging sometimes, but it is a thing. You can do it.
Oh boy, Mickey is the biggest Pez dispenser ever. Wow.
So I'm about to say might get me kicked out of Guam forever, but I gotta be real with you. These tomorrow chip cookies, these are definitely 100% made in Guam, and I'm gonna be totally honest, they're not very good cookies. I'm sorry, don't at me, or at me, I don't really care. It's good to know that the reject version of the M&Ms got work after that career choice didn't pan out, but yeah, you got to feel a little bad for these guys. This was their only option, The tower on the right there, that's where we stayed at last year. Usually you can never afford, I could never afford to be in there, but because of the pandemic, there were no tourists, so what was usually like $300 a night was only like $80 a night. It was an amazing experience. And then over here, I just want to point this out, back there, that is the mezclados that my mom and I would eat at, the one I was talking about before. So as you can see, it's right there, super convenient to get to. By the way, they have a big shuttle service here called the Red Guahan Shuttle. I've seen it driving around. They all kind of look like that. I've never used it. I think sometimes they charge for it and some stops they don't. And I think a large part of the motivation is they basically just want to be able to very easily get the tourists to like the outlets, like going to the Guam Premier outlets. They basically just want to get them there to go shop and buy stuff. So one ride is $4. I guess you can get passes. Like I said, I've never actually used this. Yeah, up there it actually breaks it all down. So this, if you want to, ride around within certain, on a bus line, this is not a bad choice. If you want more personal choice, you either need to rent a car or use what I was talking about before. There's this app kind of like Uber called Stroll. It actually seems to be working on this trip. I just haven't bothered to use it, but I checked it out. It seemed to be functional, so that's good that that's back at least. Do you guys remember what I was telling you about the exclusive Hello Kitties? Well, they have the Guam version, slightly altered. They also have Depressed Egg, because I don't know what else this thing is called. And then they have Doraemon. Again, it's the same deal where people collect these, and these are exclusive ones that only exist in these islands. Gudetama, I just call them Depressed Egg. Now what's interesting, I thought of another way to explain this. If you've never been to Guam, one thing it kind of feels like is if Hawaii, Japan, and Korea all had a baby. Because it basically, it has, obviously it's American, so it gets all that from Hawaii, and it's, tropical island, all that sort of thing. But at the same time, it basically tries to, it's sometimes in this case like that, pretends to be Hawaii, so it's got a bunch of Hawaiian stuff here. But also because it's so close to Asia and because it's basically constantly appealing to Japanese and Korean tourists, it also has a lot of their stuff here. So when you go into, like, say, a convenience store or a grocery store or whatever, you're going to get kind of everything. And basically, if you ever want to try going to a place like Japan or try going to a place like Korea and you are an American, Guam is a good like training wheels type of thing to kind of figure out what you like and don't like so that you have some sense of that before you get there. I don't know how else to phrase it. Guam is a million things. It's one of the weirdest yet coolest parts of the United States. This would be a perfect example of what I mean. A lot of this stuff is like Japanese snack foods, but since this isn't really here for the Americans, of course the Americans can buy it, but it's usually here when the Japanese tourists are here and they're like, I kind of miss home a little bit, something familiar, this is available to them. As I said, good training wheels situation. If you're in the US and you're like, I wonder if this thing would be good in Japan, try it here and find out. That way when you know when you go there how it is. Okay, that looks pretty good. And that's another one. You get a lot of stuff from Thailand too, so you can try stuff here that exists in Thailand. Those both sound bomb, by the way. So we're up at JCB Plaza Lounge, Guam. You'll see a lot of advertisements for JCB. It's actually a Japanese credit card, but here, not surprisingly, they're very widely accepted because lots of Japanese tourists. So if you're ever like, what am I looking at? There you go. Apparently there's almost like an airport lounge here for credit card holders. That's kind of neat. All right, so I want a coffee, so I'm going to try that one that's Korean that I thought looked a lot like cereal. Now, I didn't say this at the time, but the cereal I was thinking of was Sugar Smacks. Look at that. It looks a lot like them. Now, it's entirely possible these are actually supposed to be like, coffee beans. I guess that might make more sense. But that's what I interpreted it as. So I just opened the lid up. I haven't tried it yet. Let's see how this... It does kind of smell like Sugar Smacks. The one with the frog? Let's see here. It actually does taste like that. I don't know. To me, it honestly does kind of taste like Sugar Smacks cereal, which is a little weird. And it's hard for me to be sure of that because A, I haven't had Sugar Smacks cereal in a long time. B, how much of this is placebo effect? How much of this do I want it to be true? Does that make any sense? Because it doesn't advertise the cereal itself. It doesn't even mention cereal, at least in English or an obvious translation through Google. But to my palate, it actually does kind of taste like Sugar Smacks cereal. I don't know. It's good. That much I can tell you. It's a sugary coffee drink. But yeah, no joke. It actually does. It actually really does kind of taste like Sugar Smacks cereal. And that'll do it. Thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned to part 8, in which we continue our adventures on Guam, and then we go back to Japan. Nagoya specifically, a part of Japan I have never been to. And our adventures there, of course, will continue. So, as always, please like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate that. As well as check out the description and hit me up on all the social media stuff. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc. Thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you all later.